I would watch my mind start to spin up and get upset and, you know, um, just be fighting the circumstances of which I was finding myself in.
Hi, welcome to the Judy Torel Show, where I explore topics intended to optimize every body 50, 60, 70, and above.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Judy Torel Show. If you are joining me in this episode, then you are on episode number 4 of my 5th series, and the theme for this series is, what skills have I learned by participating in ultra distance and ultra endurance sport in my life that I am finding are an aid to my ability to grow, live in my aging and changing body? And how can I relay those skills, in a way that my clients and you, my viewers for my podcast, can also benefit to apply to your own aging process in your body? And what was inspiring me to do this particular theme series is I just got back literally 24 hours ago from doing my most recent ultra distance and ultra endurance event. Myself and one of my clients, I'm 59 and a half, and my client, also female, is 69. The two of us just rode our bicycles from Albany, New York, all the way over to the opposite end of New York State, which is a long state. This is actually 380 miles to Buffalo on our bicycles. And it took us 6 days, a couple half days, and we encountered weather conditions that are very atypical for this time of year in this area. And of course, doing this type of activity, there's the challenges of the weather conditions that I just mentioned. There's the challenges of doing a 380-mile ride on mixed terrain, urban roadways, trails, signage that may or may not be accurate or that you miss and you find yourself off path and lost basically, and then having to find your way back. And then your own internal states of your body, like various pains and outputs that are growing in discomfort, but you haven't reached your destination yet for that day or for the end of the event. And you have to, manage all that. And there's a set of skills that you learn and that you are basically refining and polishing off and becoming more and more efficient at using when you're participating in these type of events, to be able to get you to finish them and not bail out at any point during them. And those skills I call them life skills, but I've been doing events like this since, I'd say, about 2 decades now. And it's very different doing them in a 20 or 35-year-old body than it is in a 55, 59, 60-year-old body. And the skills that I apply in the events and that I'm using to get through them, I am noticing as I'm aging are the same skills that are helpful for being living in a body that is changing on you in ways that you don't like. It's very adverse and uncomfortable and upsetting. And yet, you have to be with it. So I'm on episode number 4 in this series. And the mental skill that I want to talk about in this series is tolerance. Now, we were out on this ride, and the 2 first days of this ride, we had unseasonably cold temperatures and vicious headwinds. It's June. We should not have encountered them. They were not expected. As a matter of fact, when we first started, I almost suggested to my partner that we wait a day because I don't ride my bicycle when it's 47 degrees out, even on a good day, let alone, if we're going to start a 380-mile trek. But, that was a adverse condition, and we had only have a certain amount of time for doing this activity. And so off we went. We had to adjust. We had to tolerate what was not desirable. And, we got halfway through the ride, and we had the complete opposite set of weather circumstances. It was a heat advisory in Rochester when we were there. It was 100 degrees when we left our starting hotel for that leg of the trip. So, debilitating heat, a variety of weather conditions that were adverse and non-desirable. Add to that, the heat it really does rob you. I can tolerate heat fairly well and always have been able to, but it's no debate that when it's that hot, your body has a survival mechanism that kicks in. It will not let you push beyond a certain level of intensity for fear of, it's in a crisis mode. You could die of the heat, stroke or heat exhaustion. So, you're in those weather conditions, and inside your own mind, it's like, it shouldn't be like this. Oh my God, I'm dying. This is ridiculous. Like, the weather should be, in line with this trip. We planned this for this week. Why is the weather like this? And then, if you let your mind run down that path, it becomes a very negative place. And it may actually stop you from, doing what you set out to do. So the mental skill that I was using over and over again in this ride, one of 6 that I'm talking about in the series, is tolerance. Like, I would watch my mind start to spin up and get upset and, just be fighting the circumstances of which I was finding myself in. And I had to take breath and step back and say, okay, what is manifesting here in the weather? When we got lost a couple times, it was like, and we have a map and we had a GPS and we had, the trail guide that we were on, to use across the state, the Erie Canal bike trail. But it's not just one trail, and you're in and out of towns, and it's very easy when you're, in the transitional areas. The signage is not great, and there were several times where it was like, I don't know how to find our way out of this, and I don't know what to do. And I had to take a breath and say to myself, okay, Judy, this is what is right now. This is what you're facing, and you got to figure it out. You got to take a breath. You got to support yourself. You got to figure this out. You have to be tolerant of what is feeling intolerable. There's certain points on the ride where I was, really challenged, taxed from a physical perspective. I have severely arthritic knees. I had clipless pedals that I'm in, and they were getting worn down. They're brand new, but they weren't clipping in right. I had a 20-pound pack on my back. And when we got to urban centers, it was scary. It was harrowing because I didn't trust my own body ability to clip into the pedals when we'd have to stop at a light. And there's trucks and cars going by at 65 miles an hour. And it was intolerable feeling. It was scary. And yet I was like, all right, what am I going to do? Like, sit down and cry and turn into an amoeba of mush, of an emotional wreck? I was like, okay, Judy, take a breath. You've got to figure this out. You've got to tolerate this and find your way out of this box. And so those are some examples from on the trip. But why am I telling you this? And how does that apply to living in a body that's aging? Well, for me, every morning when I get up and I go to walk and get out of bed, it's like who took the oil out of the Tin Man? It's like who reduced the elasticity of my muscles to bark. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go to work. I've got to teach classes. I've got to exercise people. This is my job. And I can barely walk. This is intolerable. And I'm like, okay, take a breath. You figure this out. All right, let me get my massage gun out. Let me put some, magnesium cream on the muscles to, help them to release from having been stiff and tightened up overnight. And let me do some dynamic limbering, and let me tolerate the state of my body as a 59-year-old female and figure it out. I have clients that come to me that they've gained weight through their 50s, and now they're having grandchildren, and now they're in their early 60s or late 50s, and they've got extra weight on their body. Their joints hurt them. They're eating, not in a way that's not in line with their their stage of life now. And so it's an inflammation. They feel terrible, and yet they want to be able to be around for their grandkids, and they want to be able to play and, go on hikes and do things with them as they're growing up, their grandchildren. And their bodies are like, they come to me saying, like, is there any hope for me? Or am I too old to improve? Is this the state I'm going to be in? And I'm like, no, it's not. But whatever your path has been up until this moment is what this is what your body's reflection of your age, how you've cared for it, and so it's exactly as it should be right now. So we have to be able to tolerate that, but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. It means that, you can now evaluate what do you need to do to make it work, as best it can optimally at this stage of your life, and not compared to the way it was when you were younger. In yoga, which I am a certified yoga instructor for a decade now, over a decade, 2 decades close to, there's a concept called equanimity. And it's basically very similar. It is what I'm talking about here. And what it means is that no matter what situation you're approaching, you're suspending judgment, and you're just saying, okay, I am going to be like neutral to this. Not neutral like in placid and kind of disjointed from it, but neutral in that, okay, I'm going to be with that this is what is right now. So in other words, I'm going to tolerate. I'm not going to get my mind spun up at that it should be some other way. This is the way it is in my 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old body. And everything I've done up until this point has led it to be the state it's in. But that doesn't mean I can't redirect now. Maybe I haven't been eating, as cleanly or as an anti-inflammatory as I would like to now that I have arthritis in various joints. And so maybe let me get some information about how I might have to change that now for the state of the body I'm in right now. And that's a very different approach than, oh, I shouldn't have this. Why do I have osteoarthritis? Other people haven't cared for themselves as much as I have, and yet their knees are fine. You can create all sorts of intolerant scenarios in your mind and basically make your current state very undesirable, very uncomfortable. So, as your body's aging, and, you have to be tolerant of whatever is manifesting. You have to accept it with like non-judgmentalness, like as a neutrality, what has manifested up to this point, but then say, all right, what paths can I take going forward to maybe minimize, what is manifested, or reverse it, or, move it into the next couple of years or decade in a way that I'm going to be, when I get to that, it's still not going to be what it was when I was 20 or 30, but I can, improve on it for that stage of life or my current stage of life. But as part of that process, it's being tolerant for what it is that's going on in that very moment. It is a very valuable skill. And it really doesn't necessarily change the situation. Like, practicing tolerance didn't change the weather conditions that we were under on this bike ride, but it did change how I was experiencing it. So, we are gifted to be able to be living now in bodies that they would have been passed, they would have died or at different stages of human history. At 59 years old, I would have been timed out, not riding my bike across the state of New York. And so, recognizing that there's a lot of gifts that are going with whatever situation you have going on in your body, even as it's aging. And then, using that as a balancing attitude for tolerating what you might not like, and then finding a path for figuring out how to manage that, what you don't like, as you move forward. So tolerance, it means to me showing up with whatever is in the moment, not necessarily from a passive acceptance point of view, but from okay, this is what is, and now what do I need to do as I'm moving forward now? Not waving a magic wand and making myself a different stage of my life, but staying in this stage and then figuring it out so that I can optimize it with whatever's showing up. So tolerance is a very important skill for living in a body that's 50, 60, 70, 80, and beyond. All right, so this is mental skill number 4 that I have learned and refined and utilized in endurance sport that I am applying to living in my aging body, and that I'm sharing with those of you who are on a similar stage of life and want to make it the second 50 even better than their first 50. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. I have 2 more in this series that are equally valuable, so stay, till the end of the series. And as always, thanks for watching, and be well.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you'd like to have access to some of my additional resources, I can be found at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on my website, www.judytorel.com.